The day my son told me to get out of my own house is a day I will never forget. His wife stood beside him. Her arms crossed her lips, twisted into a smirk that cut through me like a knife. My son, the boy I carried for 9 months, the boy whose fevers I nursed, whose scraped knees I kissed, whose dreams I sacrificed for, looked me straight in the eye and said, "Mom, you can't stay here anymore. My wife doesn't want you in this house. It's time you left." For a moment, I thought I had misheard him. Surely he couldn't mean it. Surely blood meant more than the opinion of a woman who had only been in his life for a few years. I laughed nervously, trying to shake off the tension. "What do you mean, son? This is my home. I built this house with your father. Every brick, every wall has my blood and sweat in it." But his eyes were cold, unfamiliar. "It doesn't matter. Things are different now. We're married. We need privacy. We don't want you interfering." Interfering, that word stabbed me in the heart. Had my love, my cooking, my care, my guidance, all of it become interfering? His wife stepped forward, her perfume sharp, her voice sharper. "You've had your time here. Now it's ours. Don't make this harder than it needs to be." I wanted to scream. I wanted to shake my son and ask him how he could betray me so easily, but instead I stood frozen, my heart shattering silently in my chest. My mind raced back to the day I first brought him to this house as a baby wrapped in a soft blanket. His tiny hands clutching my finger. I remembered him taking his first steps across this very living room, his laughter echoing against the walls. I remembered nights spent awake during storms holding him close when he was scared. And now, the same boy had become a man who looked at me as if I were nothing but an intruder. I packed my things quietly. My hands trembled as I folded the clothes I had worn for years. As I placed old photo albums into a small bag, the walls seemed to close in around me, mocking me with memories of a happier past. My son didn't help me. He didn't even look at me. His wife watched her eyes gleaming with victory. When I walked out of that house, I didn't cry. My tears had frozen somewhere deep inside me. I walked down the street with my small bag, each step heavier than the last. Neighbors looked at me curiously, whispering behind closed curtains, but I kept my head high. If my own child didn't value me, then I would not let strangers see me break. That night, I stayed in a small rented room at the edge of town. The walls were bare, the mattress thin, the light dim. I sat on the bed, clutching the photo of my late husband. "Do you see this?" I whispered, my voice cracking. "Your son has thrown me out of our house, the home we built together. Are you watching from above? Do you see what has become of the family we dreamed of? Sleep didn't come." My mind replayed the scene over and over, the coldness in my son's eyes, the cruel satisfaction in my daughter-in-law's smirk. By dawn, I had made a decision. They thought they had one, they thought they had pushed me into a corner, but they had forgotten something. That house wasn't just bricks and paint, it was mine, legally, emotionally, historically mine. And if they thought they could take it from me, they were about to learn just how wrong they were. In the days that followed, I went to work quietly. I found the old documents my husband and I had signed when we first purchased the land. I found the deed, the title, every piece of paper that tied the house to my name. They hadn't even bothered to check, assuming I was too weak, too old, too broken to fight. But I wasn't. At the same time, I listened carefully to the whispers around town. It turned out my daughter-in-law had been bragging. She told her friends how she had cleaned the old lady out, how she and her husband finally had the house to themselves. My cheeks burned with humiliation when I heard it. But that humiliation quickly turned into fuel. They wanted me gone. They wanted my house fine, but they were about to regret underestimating me. One evening, I returned to the house quietly. I still had a key, something they had forgotten to take from me in their arrogance. I walked through the familiar door, my footsteps echoing on the polished floor. They weren't home yet. The walls whispered memories to me, each corner reminding me of what I had lost. I stood in the living room, staring at the family photo that still hung on the wall. Me, my husband, and my son smiling together in happier times. My throat tightened, but I didn't cry, not anymore. When they finally arrived, laughter spilled in through the door. They froze when they saw me standing there. My daughter-in-law's smile vanished instantly, her eyes narrowing. My son's jaw tightened. "What are you doing here?" he demanded. I looked him straight in the eye, my voice calm but unyielding. "I came to remind you, this is my house and I'm not leaving." His wife scoffed. "Not anymore. You're out. You have no right to be here." I pulled out the documents from my bag, laying them on the table with deliberate slowness. "Really? Then perhaps you should read these. The deed is in my name. The title is in my name. Every stone of this house belongs to me, not you, not your wife. Me." The color drained from her face. My son's eyes widened in shock. "That can't be," he stammered. But I cut him off. "It is. You were too quick to forget who built this home, who sacrificed everything to keep it standing. You thought I was weak. You thought I would walk away quietly, but you were wrong." For a moment, silence filled the room. My daughter-in-law's hands trembled as she tried to gather words. My son looked at me as though seeing me for the first time, not as a burden, not as a shadow, but as the woman who had raised him, who had given him everything, and who still held the power he had tried to strip away. That night was only the beginning. I had no intention of simply reclaiming my place. I would teach them a lesson they would never forget. My daughter-in-law recovered first, her lips curling into that same poisonous smirk. "So what? You think a few papers make a difference? You're old. You can't live here alone. This house belongs to us now, not because of documents, but because we made it ours." I laughed. A sharp, bitter laugh that startled even me. "Made it yours? You've lived here for a handful of months. I built this house brick by brick with your father. Every wall carries my sweat, every corner carries my tears. You think you can erase that? You're nothing but a guest in my home, and as of today, your stay is over." Her face twisted with rage. My son stepped between us, his voice shaking. "Mom, please don't make this worse. We can work something out." I narrowed my eyes. "Work something out? You told me to get out of my own house. You didn't ask politely. You didn't suggest gently. You ordered me. You let her stand there and mock me, and you said nothing. And now you want to work something out. No, son, the time for that has passed." He opened his mouth, but no words came. He lowered his head like a child caught stealing. For the first time, he looked ashamed. And that shame gave me strength. I didn't stay that night, not yet. I left the papers on the table and walked out, leaving them to stew in their fear. I wanted them to feel the ground shake beneath their feet, to realize the comfort they had mocked me for was not theirs to keep. Over the next few days, I set my plan in motion. I met with the lawyer who had handled my husband's affairs years ago. He remembered me well, and when I showed him the documents, he nodded gravely. "You are the sole legal owner. They cannot throw you out. If anything, you can throw them out." The words lit a fire inside me. For weeks, I had been drowning in humiliation, replaying my son's command to get out. Now I was the one with power. Now the choice was mine. I returned to the house the following week. This time I didn't wait for them to leave. I knocked once, then let myself in with my key. They were sitting in the living room, and when they saw me, my daughter-in-law leapt to her feet. "What are you doing here again?" I didn't flinch. "I told you this is my house, and from today I'm taking it back." Her eyes narrowed. "You can't do that." I smiled coldly. "Watch me." I called in a locksmith right then and there, in front of their stunned faces. I ordered him to change every lock in the house. My son's jaw dropped. My daughter-in-law sputtered in protest, but the locksmith ignored her, following my instructions carefully. By the time he left, their keys were useless. "You can't do this!" She shrieked, her voice rising to a pitch that made the walls tremble. "Oh, but I can," I said calmly. "And I just did. If you wish to stay here, it will be under my rules. If not, you can leave. The choice is yours." My son stared at me, his face pale, his lips trembling. "Mom, please don't throw us out. We'll treat you better. We'll respect you." Respect, that word again. The very thing they had stripped from me was now the one thing they offered desperately. Like beggars with empty bowls, I didn't soften. Not yet. They needed to understand. They needed to feel the fear I had felt when they cast me out with no place to go. So I said nothing. I simply walked into my old bedroom, closed the door behind me, and claimed it once more as my own. That night, I slept better than I had in weeks. The mattress was familiar, the air smelled of jasmine from the garden, and the walls no longer pressed down on me. But my heart remained heavy. I had returned, yes, but not as the same woman who had been thrown out. I had returned with fire in my veins, and that fire wasn't going to be extinguished easily. Over the next few days, I asserted my presence. I cooked in my kitchen again, the aroma of my meals filling the house. I walked through the garden, trimming the roses I had planted years ago. I sat on the porch in the evenings, sipping tea as neighbors walked by, their eyes wide with surprise at my return. And each time I caught sight of my daughter-in-law's face, tight, bitter, seething, I felt a satisfaction I can't describe. But I wasn't finished. No, I wanted more than just my house back. I wanted justice. I wanted them to learn a lesson they would never forget. One morning, I invited a few neighbors over for tea. They had all heard whispers of what had happened, but no one knew the full story. I let them sit in my living room sipping tea and eating snacks while my son and his wife sat awkwardly in the corner. And then with deliberate calm, I told them everything. I told them how my son had ordered me to get out, how his wife had smirked while I packed my bags, how they had thrown me onto the street as though I were a burden. Gas filled the room, eyes turned toward them with judgment, with disgust. My son's face burned red, my daughter-in-law's lips pressed into a thin line. By the time the neighbors left, their reputation was in tatters. Whispers spread like wildfire through the community. The boy who once was admired for his success was now seen as a traitor to his own mother. His wife, once envied for her charm, was now despised as cruel and ungrateful. And me, for the first time in years, I felt seen, respected, vindicated. But still, I wasn't done. Not yet. I contacted my lawyer again, this time with a different request. Draw up papers, I told him. I want this house placed in a trust, one that excludes my son and his wife completely. If I ever pass, this house will go to charity, not to them. His eyes widened, but he obeyed. And when I held those papers in my hands, I felt an unshakable calm. Even if they tried to wait me out, even if they hoped to inherit after I was gone, they would get nothing. My son begged me not to do it. He fell to his knees, tears streaming down his face. Please, Mom, don't cut me out. I was wrong. We were wrong. Give us another chance. But I had heard his words before. Words meant nothing without actions. I looked down at him, my voice steady. You told me to get out. You made your choice. Now I've made mine. And with that, I turned and walked away, leaving him kneeling on the floor, his wife glaring daggers behind him. That night, as I lay in my bed, the bed I had been forced to abandon weeks before, I whispered to myself, this is only the beginning. The days that followed were tense. My son and his wife tiptoed around me like strangers in their own home. Every meal was quiet. Every conversation clipped. My daughter-in-law no longer smirked openly, but I could feel her hatred burning through every glance she threw my way. She wasn't used to losing, and now she had lost something bigger than she could handle control. One evening, as I prepared tea in the kitchen, I overheard them arguing in their bedroom. Their voices carried through the thin walls. She humiliated us, my daughter-in-law hissed. Do you know what the neighbors are saying? Do you know how many people laughed at me in the market today? I won't live like this. You promised me this house, this life. Now she's turned it into a nightmare. My son tried to calm her. I didn't expect her to fight back. I thought she would just go. She's never stood up to me like this before. Well, she has now. She snapped. So, what are you going to do about it? Are you going to let her win, or are you going to take back what you promised me? I smiled bitterly to myself. They still thought of me as an obstacle, something to be removed. They hadn't learned a thing. That night, I sat at my desk and wrote in my journal a habit I had picked up years ago when my husband was alive. They still see me as weak, I wrote. But they don't understand that I am stronger than I have ever been. I will not give them another inch. If they want a war, they will have one. The very next morning, I woke to find my bedroom door locked from the outside. First, I thought I was imagining it. I tried the knob again and again, but it wouldn't budge. Panic surged through me. My own son had locked me in my room like a prisoner. I banged on the door. Open this door right now, I shouted, silence! My heart pounded, fury bubbling inside me. I grabbed a chair and slammed it against the door until the frame cracked and the lock gave way. I burst out into the hallway, my breath ragged, my eyes blazing. My daughter-in-law was standing at the bottom of the stairs, arms folded, that smirked back on her lips. I told you, she said coldly. This house isn't big enough for all of us. You should have left when you had the chance. I wanted to slap her, but instead I straightened my shoulders and replied, no, you should have left when you had the chance. That same afternoon, I met with my lawyer again. They tried to lock me in my own bedroom. I told him, my voice trembling with anger. I want them out, both of them. I don't care if he's my son. They are no longer welcome under my roof. The lawyer nodded. You have every right. The house is legally yours. We can serve them an eviction notice, and the satisfaction that filled me was sharp, almost cruel. They had forced me to the edge, and now I would push them off the cliff. When the papers arrived, I handed them to my son myself. He stared at the envelope as if it were a snake ready to bite him. His wife snatched it, tore it open, and read aloud, her voice rising with every word. Eviction, you're evicting us. Yes, I said firmly. You wanted me gone. Now it's your turn. She screamed, her voice shrill, ugly. You can't do this. Well, fight you in court. Go ahead, I said calmly. But you'll lose. The law is on my side. My son's shoulders slumped. He looked older, suddenly worn down. Mom, please, he whispered. Don't do this. We'll change. We'll treat you with respect. Just don't make us leave. I stared at him, my heart heavy. This was my son, the boy I had once carried on my hip. The boy who had once looked at me as if I were his whole world, but now he was a man who had betrayed me, chosen a woman's cruelty over his mother's love. You should have thought of that before you told me to get out, I said softly. The days that followed were filled with chaos. My daughter-in-law raged like a storm, slamming doors, shouting insults, throwing things. She screamed at my son, blaming him for everything. He grew quieter and quieter, shrinking under her fury until he barely spoke at all. I, on the other hand, grew stronger. Every step I took through the house reminded me of my power, my ownership. I began restoring it, rearranging furniture, hanging up old photos, cooking meals that filled the air with the scent of home. The house was alive again, but not for them. For me, neighbors stopped by often now. Some came with gifts, others with whispered words of support. "You're brave," one woman told me. "Most mothers would have given in, but you stood your ground. You showed them you're not to be pushed aside." Their support warmed me, but it also stoked my determination. I realized I wasn't just fighting for myself, I was fighting for every parent who had ever been discarded by the very children they sacrificed everything for. One evening, as I sat on the porch sipping tea, my son joined me quietly. His eyes were red, his face pale. For a long moment, we sat in silence. Then he whispered, "I'm sorry, Mom. I don't know what happened to me. I let her control me. I let her convince me you were in the way, but you weren't. You were never in the way. You were always the reason we even had a roof over our heads." Tears stung my eyes, but I didn't let them fall. "It's too late for apologies," I said softly. "Some wounds don't heal with words. They need time, and even then scars remain." He nodded, his head hanging low. His wife's voice rang out from inside the house, calling his name sharply. He flinched like a child, then stood and left me alone with my thoughts. That night I prayed for strength, not for myself. I had already found mine, but for my son. He was trapped in a web of manipulation and weakness, and I didn't know if he would ever break free. But one thing was certain. Whether he stayed trapped or not, I would never again let him or anyone take my dignity from me. The eviction date drew closer, and the tension in the house thickened like a storm before it breaks. My daughter-in-law became unbearable, slamming dishes, stomping through the halls, calling me names under her breath. She thought her anger could scare me into backing down, but I had faced bigger storms in life. Her tantrums were nothing compared to the silence of a husband's grave or the ache of a child's betrayal. One morning, she cornered me in the kitchen. "You're destroying your own son's life." She spat, her eyes flashing with hatred. "Do you know what people are saying about us? Do you know the humiliation you've brought?" I placed my teacup down slowly and looked her in the eye. "The humiliation you feel is nothing compared to the humiliation you gave me when you and my son threw me out. You mocked me, made me feel worthless. Now the world knows the truth. You brought this upon yourself," she snarled. But before she could retort, my son entered the room. He looked between us, his face pale. "Enough," he said quietly. "This fighting, it has to stop." She turned on him, her voice sharp as knives. "You're going to let her do this. She's evicting us. We'll have nowhere to go." His eyes flickered with something I hadn't seen in months resolve. "Then maybe that's what we deserve," he whispered, her face twisted with rage. She stormed out, slamming the door so hard the walls shook. My son sank into a chair, burying his face in his hands. "I don't know how it came to this," he said. "I just wanted a family, a home, and now I'm losing both. I wanted to comfort him, to tell him he was still my son, that I would always love him, but love without respect is poison. And he had poisoned our bond the day he told me to get out." The eviction day arrived like a thunderclap. My lawyer stood beside me as officials delivered the notice formally. My daughter-in-law screamed, cursed, threatened lawsuits, but none of it mattered. The law was clear. The house was mine, and they were leaving. Neighbors gathered outside, whispering, watching the drama unfold. Some shook their heads, others whispered prayers. I stood tall, my face calm, though inside my heart was pounding. This was it, the moment I had waited for. My son carried boxes quietly to the car. He didn't look at me, didn't speak. His wife barked orders at him, berating him for every step, every misplaced item, but he obeyed silently like a man who had already lost everything. When the last box was loaded, she turned to me, her face twisted with hatred. "You think you've won, you'll regret this. He's my husband, and I'll make sure he never forgives you for what you've done." I met her gaze steadily. "No, you're the one he'll never forgive for turning him against his own mother." For the first time, she faltered. Her lips parted, but no words came. She turned away sharply, dragging him into the car. The engine roared, and they drove off, leaving nothing but dust in their wake. The silence that followed was deafening. I stood in the doorway of my house, looking at the empty rooms, the abandoned corners. For the first time in weeks, the air felt light. The house was mine again, peaceful, whole, alive. But the victory wasn't sweet. My heart ached for the boy who used to run through these halls with laughter in his eyes, who used to call me mom with love in his voice. That boy was gone, replaced by a man who had chosen wrong, who had allowed cruelty to shape his choices. Still, I knew this was necessary. Sometimes love means letting go. Sometimes dignity must come before forgiveness. In the weeks that followed, I began to rebuild not just the house, but myself. I painted the walls, replanted the garden, reopened windows that had been shut tight. The house bloomed under my care, and so did I. One afternoon, as I watered the roses, I saw my son standing at the gate. His eyes were red, his clothes wrinkled. He looked like a man who had aged 10 years in as many days. "Mom," he said softly. I didn't answer right away. I let him stand there, shifting awkwardly, his hands trembling. Finally, I spoke. "What do you want, son?" He swallowed hard. I left her. I couldn't take it anymore. She blamed me for everything. She said I was weak, useless, and she was right. I was weak. I let her poison my heart against you. I let her words become my truth. But it wasn't the truth. You were the one who raised me, who sacrificed for me, who gave me everything, and I threw it back in your face, almost. Tears welled in my eyes, but I held them back. "Why are you here?" I asked. He lowered his head. "Not for the house, not for money, just for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I know, but I had to ask." Silence hung between us. My heart battled itself, anger against love, pain against compassion. Finally, I sighed. "You broke something in me, son, something that may never fully heal. But you're still my child, and a mother's heart. It can never stop loving, no matter how deep the wound." He stepped forward, tears streaming down his face. "I'm sorry, Mom. I'll spend the rest of my life proving it to you." I nodded slowly, then start by respecting me. Truly not with words, but with actions. "If you can do that, maybe, just maybe, we can find our way back." He nodded eagerly, as if clinging to the lifeline I had thrown him. That evening, as I sat in the living room of the house I had fought for, I realized something profound. This wasn't just about walls or deeds or ownership. It was about dignity, about self-respect, about proving that no one, not even your own blood, has the right to strip you of your worth. And as the sun set, painting the sky in hues of gold and crimson, I whispered to myself, "This is my house, my life, my story, and I will never be told to get out again."